The courtroom sank into a heavy silence, not because justice had prevailed, but because something far more unsettling had just unfolded. Judge Elizabeth Carver, cloaked in her black robe of presumed fairness, leaned forward, her voice cutting through the air like a blade of ice. "You people always end up here, don't you? Standing before true Americans, begging for mercy." The room stirred, some recoiled, others stiffened, but one man remained still, unshaken. His gaze held steady, not with rage but with something deeper, weightier. Unbeknownst to all, in precisely 7 minutes the power dynamic would shift. His name was Malachi Reed, 41, a former Marine turned civil rights lawyer, the son of a woman who once scrubbed courthouse floors and the grandson of a man barred from voting until age 72. Malachi had lived his life in quiet, not out of fear, but because he understood the power of listening. He had heard too many tales etched in sorrow, too many names buried beneath the silence of inequity. Years earlier he had sat in a courtroom not as an attorney, but as a defendant wrongly accused at just 18. A different judge had glared down at him with disdain, sentencing him to 2 years for a crime he didn't commit. He endured, he learned, and when he returned it wasn't for vengeance, it was for truth. Today Malachi stood in that courtroom for a case that should have been straightforward. A young single mother wrongfully evicted, her landlord forging documents and threatening her with homelessness. Malachi took the case pro bono, but before any arguments could be presented, Judge Carver made her stance clear. Not on the case but on Malachi. "I've seen your type play lawyer before," she sneered, "all emotional pleas and no legal substance." Murmurs and gasps rippled through the room. Malachi remained silent, simply turning to the young mother beside him, placing a calming hand on the table. His composure enraged Carver. "Wipe that smug look off your face, Mr. Reed," she snapped. "You're not fooling anyone here." But then the atmosphere shifted. A bailiff slipped in through a side door, followed by 2 men in plain suits who stood at the back, watching, not sitting. Judge Carver noticed them, her voice wavered slightly. Malachi glanced at his watch. 2 minutes remained. The courtroom's rhythm faltered, a new tension swelling, unspoken but palpable. Carver cleared her throat, forcing a scoff. "Unless you plan to actually argue law, Mr. Reed, I suggest you take your little act elsewhere." The 2 men at the back stepped forward. A U.S. Marshal badge gleamed under the fluorescent lights. The lead marshal held a folder and addressed not Malachi but the judge. "Elizabeth Carver, you are under federal investigation for bribery, obstruction of justice, and civil rights violations under Title 18. Her face drained of color. The bailiffs stood motionless, they knew. The courtroom froze. Malachi rose, slow and deliberate, reaching into his briefcase, not for a legal pad but for a sealed document. "This," he said softly, "is a sworn affidavit from 2 whistleblowers in your chambers. I filed it 3 days ago. Today was your last hearing." As the marshal approached the bench, the room, once filled with Carver's scorn, now hummed with stunned silence. Her once commanding voice, now brittle, broke. You set me up," she hissed. Malachi shook his head. "You set yourself up years ago. I just believe someone should finally answer to the law, even if they wear the robe." One of the bailiffs, a younger black man who had endured Carver's quiet humiliations, met Malachi's eyes. A spark of gratitude flickered there. Carver was led out, handcuffed, down the same hallway she'd once strode with authority, now echoing with a different cadence. Malachi sat back down. "Now," he said calmly, addressing the courtroom, "shall we begin the hearing?" The eviction case was won, but that day something greater shifted. A quiet message spread, through whispers in courtrooms, legal circles, and coffee shop conversations. The system doesn't only crush the powerless. Sometimes it hears the brave. Malachi didn't celebrate. He didn't need to. Justice wasn't a spectacle. It was a duty, one his mother had dreamed of, one his grandfather had been denied. Though racism didn't end that day, it met something fiercer. Courage cloaked in silence, truth delivered with patience, and justice standing tall on its own. If this story moves you, don't just move on. Let it matter. Share it for the young man wrongfully accused, for the mother who never got her day in court, for the judge who thought she was untouchable until justice wore a new face. Subscribe if you believe the world needs more moments like this, and remember, be the reason someone still believes in goodness. Start today.